Hello, welcome back. In this lesson, I want to zoom in on some things that we've been doing all the way up to this point with a little more detail. It's so difficult to start thinking about developing an independent thumb. If you've ever watched anybody like Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed, Tommy Manuel, really great players that have this kind of bass line going on with the thumb the whole time while the rest of the fingers are doing something else. Again, the idea of thinking about the thumb as a separate line and the melody as a separate line and then hoping to put them together can be more confusing. So I just want to reinforce it's most helpful when developing an independent thumb. It is independent, but it's actually supporting what's happening with the melody. So it's actually working together. And so you want to play the patterns with each individual musical event at the same time. The thumb does this note while my other finger does this note in the melody. Then the thumb hops here and the melody goes here. So start thinking vertically, all right? So what I want to do is give you a brief little, we'll go through a couple of different chords, getting the thumb kind of hopping, and then we're going to just apply a little bit of that into the O Shenandoah melody so you can see what is happening here. And then we'll add some more expressive qualities, and then our final arrangement, putting all of this together, culminating in O Shenandoah, the grand master finale. So to start, what we want to do is just go to a G, the way we've been starting a lot of these exercises. And what you want to do is just, so third finger down on the low string here, and then your middle finger is going to go up to G on this one, okay? What you want to do with this is start thinking in terms of this hopping over from the low E, hopping over the A up to the D. So you have the most important thing when getting used to hopping over the string is becoming aware if perhaps when you play a low note that you might actually rest it on the next string, okay? If you do that, you're resting here. So for example, you'd play the string and you would sort of rest on the A string. Then you'd have to lift from there to go up to the D, and you might do another rest stroke there too. If that is your habit, just start to try to break that now. If it's not your habit, that's good. I mean, the rest stroke on the thumb is a very good technique. You just want to be aware and in control when you do it and when you don't. So if you have a tendency to do it, really work on that. You can work on developing that if it doesn't come as natural later. But right now, we want to do free stroke on each of them. That means it is free from bumping into any other string. We strike the low E, we hop over the A and go right to the D. And so what we want to do there is just go back and forth on there. And that typically will stay with like a real quarter note pulse pattern. So the thumb keeps track of that. Your other fingers are going to be playing a different pattern. And all they'll do, at least here, is just introduce one note in the chord while the thumb keeps that going. So it sounds like this. Okay, you can play that with the middle, you can play it with the index. Both will work in this case. The next chord that we're going to go to is our A minor 7, and we're going to do the same thing, except now we're going to be hopping from the A string up to the D, instead of from the low E up to the D. And what we'll do is we'll actually pick your first finger on the B string, just pick that with your middle, right? And you want that to ring out. So just so you remember, if you want something to ring out, you have to keep it pressed. It's different than piano where you can just do the sustain pedal and everything rings out. You have to make sure that you keep that pressed in order for that to ring. So you have, and then the same thing is going to happen here. We're going to do our infamous G over B chord that we've played a lot here. So you have the second fret here on the low A, and then the third fret with your fourth finger on the B. And then you're going from the A string to the D, hopping back and forth from there. And then from there, we just go back to our A minor 7. So the most important thing with this is to not rest your thumb on the other strings. You want to hop from string to string. And so play through this slowly and think about the thumb not playing fast. The thumb is not playing, in between the beat. The thumb is sort of hopping along to the quarter note pulse. So if you're tapping your foot along, the thumb is striking a note every time your foot hits the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, dun, 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 dun. Okay? So now what we want to do is figure out if we can keep the melody going. This is one of the hardest things, is thinking about the melody while thinking about this hopping thumb. But remember, don't think about them as two separate things. Think about them as one event at a time. So if we were to develop the melody here, what we want to do here is go. So now all we're doing is adding a few extra notes into what we already played in the first line of the exercise. Right? But we're just adding the thumb now. Okay? And then we're going to go. And here we're going to do the third fret down here on the low E. Okay? Now I have the thumb has traveled up to the open D. My index is going to grab the second. Okay? The second fret here on the G. Okay, so we have the. Now when we get to the next one, this makes it a little easier because we're sort of just outlining a C chord, and as you play that with your thumb, index, middle, ring are going to be on the G, B, and E strings, then you actually just hop the thumb on those bottom two strings like this. So that's nice there. And then we're going to do the same thing with our G over B. So we're going to play the G with your middle and the B with your ring finger. So you have, all right? Or you could do it this way. And then have thumb, index, and middle. Either way works, that's fine. And then we go to an E minor here. And what's cool is you'll see we have a lot of that D open is very, very common with this. Open E, open D. And then we go. Okay, and that pattern here, this is that E minor 7 that we've already played. Third finger, okay, third finger on the third fret of the B, fourth finger on the third fret of the E. And then we're just going up to the D here. So you can see those thumb hits are just quarter note pulse. They stay fairly consistent. Now we're back to that C. Now we have a D chord here. And what we're doing here is the thumb's going to grab the open D, and we have this D suspended. So your first finger on your left hand is going to be on the second fret of the G. Your third finger is going to be on the third fret of the B, and then you have the open E there. But on this hand, your picking hand, you're going to do the thumb and the index. So you have a thumb and index, and then you're going back and forth. So the middle and the index are grabbing these top two strings, while the thumb is going to grab the D and the G. And now we're going back to our G. So you're just doing open B, and then all the way up. Remember that it's got to hop from the low E to the open D while you pick this note here, the third fret of the B. And then we just end exactly where we started, where you play the open G while you do the low E string on the G and to the D. All right, so this is kind of a good introduction to developing the thumb. One thing I will say is that this can feel extremely frustrating and painful at first, trying to think about developing your independent thumb. But again, I think framing it not as independent, but having the thumb serve or better support the melody is probably a different and better way to frame it in your mind, instead of always thinking this has to be independent. No, it's always working together with what's happening in the melody. It just takes a little bit to get used to it hopping from string to string while the melody notes are changing. So don't worry too much if this is something that feels really difficult, because this does take a little bit of time to develop. So just go through that slowly, which we will do in the next scene. But let's hear what this sounds like all together at performance tempo. We're going to do this at 84 beats per minute. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, so now that's at performance tempo. What I want to do now in the next scene is run through that at 3 different tempos together. If you're having a hard time with the thumb hopping from string to string, just play consistent notes on the bass notes and you'll be fine. Because what's most important is getting not just the motion of the free stroke, but understanding where that falls in the quarter note pulse. So just keeping that consistent, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I will see you in the next scene, and we'll go through these at 3 different tempos.